Hey, welcome back. Today we have book 37.
What I thought.
37.
Well, then I pulled up the wrong book and I read the wrong reflection. You might want to pause this one real fast and then restart.
So it's the proof.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, welcome back. So book 37. Looking forward to going through this today. We are going to be reviewing a book called The Pilgrimage by, I always mispronounce his name, Paulo Coelho, I think. Yeah. The guy that wrote The Alchemist. As much as that was the book that we started this whole journey off with. The book The Alchemist, I think all of us probably agree that's a book that's had impact on our life. And I figured, this guy's a pretty great writer. So I wanted to go explore some of his other books that he has out there in the world. I came across this one. It's called The Pilgrimage. It's kind of like a prequel to The Alchemist. He wrote this before The Alchemist. This is about, in a lot of ways, it's very similar to The Alchemist. It's about a pilgrimage for Paulo Coelho on the road to Santiago. It's some spiritual path to, I think it's in Spain. He's trying to find his sword. It's a typical, just very similar to The Alchemist, shrouded in a lot of symbolism and a story, a parable a little bit. I think it's about his, it's a real journey for himself. I don't know if I totally could piece that together or not, but it laid the groundwork, honestly, for a lot of what I felt like was to come in The Alchemist in general. However, the reflection title for this one is We Really Don't Understand Until We Teach Others, the overarching theme for this. And what that came from is when he was on the pilgrimage on the road to Santiago, he came across this guide. He needed to have a guide in order to show him the ways, teach him what he needs to learn on this walk, and to help him find his sword. Basically, it was the whole symbolism of the entire book. My brain's a little fuzzy in terms of exactly what happened and didn't happen throughout the whole journey. But this guide is giving Paulo the instructions along the way, and he's giving him all these little crazy tasks to do and trying to help him to lead on his journey. We find out at the end of it that this is the first time this guy's ever been a guide. And he was like, to be honest with you, Paulo, I was learning along with you the entire time. He was like, I've done this before, but I was trying to figure this out myself. And he was like, I feel like this whole pilgrimage was more for me. I feel like I finally understood. I feel like I was able to guide you and cement my own pilgrimage that I had in the past, where I was able to say, this is finally starting to make sense. This is why you do this. So this is why you do that. And that was kind of the big lesson for me at the end of this book, because it reminded me of the whole quest for us, the core values quest that we put on through Clubany. And, when you and I first started this whole entire journey after Amelia passed away and we had met, and I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was learning. I still don't. I mean, I think we both know that that's one of our kind of core tenets of Clubany.
We don't know shit.
But at the end of the day, we knew that something was happening and we were learning stuff, and we knew that actions that we were performing were having an impact to us, but we just didn't know why or how or what was really happening necessarily, and how to kind of put the pieces together in our mind. And it reminded me, honestly, Blake, of the first time when we did your first quest, is what this reflection was about, and how I feel like your quest was almost more for me than it was for you, because I had to teach you what I was trying to learn anyway and put it together in my mind. And I feel like this whole year about this year of magical learning quest is really my way of paying it forward as well to a broader audience, and to try to solidify in my mind what has been going on this journey of all these other authors leading me and guiding me and teaching me, and then me trying to put it together, and then being able to teach other people, I guess, along the way of the lessons that I've learned. And, we're going to continue to do that stuff in the quest with Clubany once we get our Montessori workplace idea and running. And, we've had a lot of successes with other people in the past doing this. But really, I feel like at the end of the day, Blake, I'd love to get your thoughts, and True as well. Like, when you guys have led people and guided people down your own journey, did you learn more when you were doing it or when you were teaching it? Because I feel like for me, I learned so much more when I was teaching it than when I was doing it. I didn't totally get it when I was doing what I was doing and why I was doing it until I had to teach it and live it at the same time. So that's kind of the reflection overall. It's don't ever stop questing for yourself, but always remember to teach along the way if you really want to unlock life secrets. So I'd love to get your guys' thoughts.
First thing I thought of was parenting for some reason. Was like, you think, based on what you saw, how your parents, and you're like, oh, I'm going to do this better. And then when you're actually getting the situation, you really have no idea what you're doing. Try to explain something, teach you something, and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, So that's kind of what first initially that my mind went to.
I think that's a good analogy. But I mean, on the idea of you going through the quest though, and then teaching, and I know you've mentored and led other people through it, did you feel like it was more impactful for you as going through it or as trying to teach it? Like when you understood it, like when you understood and locked in the comprehension of what you were trying to actually, you know what I mean?
That's a good question. I mean, I would say For me, I feel like it was going through it. Honestly, I would say you learn something very different when you are teaching something, and how other people maybe view something that you look at that might be, you know, you're looking at the exact same thing, but you look at it very differently. It has different impact on you. So they both, I think, again, there's huge benefit in both of them, but it was different benefit.
Yeah. True. What do you got?
So first off, I like to, because this book reminds me of the pilgrimage versus the alchemist. In a way, the pilgrimage is like the notes, and the alchemist is like the lecture. When you agree with that, because
Yeah.
it's about him trying to find his way through this pilgrimage, and they say, okay, in order for me to teach somebody, I need to make sure that people understand. So I'm gonna create this story.
Yep.
And I can write it so that people understand. So they note that the things that he learned on his pilgrimage is it's a bunch of different things, different notes in different places. And then once he understood what he had, and he takes all that and orchestrate into a very cohesive and very entertaining story in The Alchemist. So that's what I want to say about the two books, if that's accurate.
I think you're spot on that. He learned The Alchemist, him writing that and telling that story was him teaching, you know, I think a lot of other people what he learned on his own pilgrimage, you know, and being that guide for other people as well, but putting it into a more, I guess, yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's like you're able to, once you comprehend something, you don't comprehend until you have to teach, you know, like you experience and you learn while you're doing it.
Right.
But it's fuzzy still. It's not locked in until you have to,
it's just pieces all over the place. And once you teach it, then you can organize it into the different patterns and imagery that you want to portray. And so when you have The Alchemist, it's a story that reads well. It's together. You understand what happened, beginning, middle, and end. And so in my experience with clubbing is the same way. And you know, the clubbing for us, you know, in a general term, we still are learning ourselves. We haven't been able to teach. But you know, in terms of the core values class, you mentioned that it's, for me, when I was going through it, I get a lot of these pieces of information, but it's still not, it's saying, well, I'm doing these, but I still can't explain to you why.
Right.
Until I start teaching it, then these things starts to put into order, because I have to figure out how to explain to you, to another person, so they can understand what I'm doing. So only when I teach is when I really, truly understand. So when I was learning and when I was doing, is essentially I'm just experiencing. And so that's that. Well, what can I think about it? Well, I don't know what I think about it.
Right.
I just know that this is what I did and this is what happened. And so it's just a lot of facts and a lot of results, a lot of insights. And then once you go and start teaching, is when you put the insight into a cohesive story. And this is when the idea of clubbing and the idea of the core values quest start to sink in and give you it makes you really sure about what you're doing.
Right.
Because when you teach, it puts it in the right order somehow. And then once you have that, it reaffirms that belief. And for me, I truly absorb more when I teach the core value quest than when I was going through it. Because when I was going through it, I just know it happened. I just don't know why it happened. And for whatever wisdom of nuggets I need to get, you know, extract from it, I just know that, hey, I do these are the result. I don't know why. I don't know the rhyme, the reason for them. But only when I start teaching, it starts to make really much more sense. I mean, it would be 5 to 10x what I've experienced. And so I experience a lot, but when I experience it, it's still fuzzy, right? You have some commitment to whatever that you see and say, okay, yeah, I see it, but I just don't feel it. And when I see that if you do this, you get that, but I just don't feel it. But when you go into the teaching, this is when it starts to absorb into the core of your being. And then when you do that, you just feel it and you express it. And when you express that, people start to understand what you're saying. And then you can also articulate a little bit better. And so to me, in the way that we do things, it's when you learn something, it's only half circle. You have to do the other to fully go back to complete the circle. So you have to learn it and then take what you learn and teach it, because only then you fully understand and absorb what you have got, the concept and ideas to absorb into your core and for you to believe and for you to feel. Without that, whatever you learn, it's either going to fade or it's going to create a conflict of future information, whether it's true or not. It's going to conflict with that.
You know, it's funny. I couldn't agree more with everything you're saying. The two kind of things that popped in my head were like, when you're on a quest, you're like picking up puzzle pieces everywhere and you're gathering your puzzle pieces. But when you're teaching it, you're like, I'm going to put all the puzzle pieces. I'm going to actually complete the picture and be able to put it all together for you. But then secondly, like you said, the whole completing the loop, like that's why this year of magical learning isn't a year of magical learning unless you're writing it and sharing it with other people, like what we're talking about right now. Because like, it's one thing to go read a bunch of books. It's another thing to go learn a bunch of stuff. And then it's another thing to complete the cycle of like, this is me in my own way of trying to solidify what I learned in my own head, and to try to coach back to somebody else of like this exact conversation, you know, like what we're talking about right now and we're sharing with other people is us coaching right now, right? In a lot of ways, we've already read the content. We know kind of what it meant and we understood that piece of the puzzle, but it takes time to sit down and write and process your thoughts and to figure it all out, to be able to say, how would I explain this to somebody else? And that's what writing does for me personally. It slows you down and it makes you put this all together. And then this conversation is another way for us to open up new avenues of how better we can describe that to other people with different analogies. And what's a puzzle? It's like completing the circle, like you said. These are ideas that don't come out when you're just reading this book. You have to go teach it to comprehend it and to move forward with your own quest, if you will. So all the pieces are important. Should always be questing, should always be learning. You should always be reinforcing that through teaching if you really want things to stick. I think the most important thing is the giving back and teaching, because like you can't, nothing matters. You know, who cares if you know all this stuff and you don't share it with other people? What's the point?
Right. Yeah. But the thing is that your point is you don't really understand until you teach others is because you don't really understand it. And that's, I mean, it may seem simple, but it's really true, because you don't really understand until you can say, well, what I've learned, what did I learn? Well, can I tell somebody what I learned? And can he or she understands what I'm saying? Only then did I really know what I'm talking about, that I understand what piece of puzzle was given to me. And so it is truly important to have those two parts. You can't have one, because one is not enough, because it's just, to me, it's a worthless piece of puzzle if you don't do the second half.
Yeah. Yep, I agree. You can't teach without doing, and you can't do without
right.
teaching.
It's about trying to understand it.
That's a hard thing for a lot of people, is just to do, you know, like, so, I mean, it's not a foregone conclusion that most people can just go do, you know. That's where all the values and the why and all that other stuff and the purpose comes in, of just getting you to go do, but really cementing, you know, all those deeper meanings behind things is through teaching, in my view.
Right.
Like, Blake, you have any other thoughts?
No, I think you guys are spot on, to be honest with you.
That was a fun discussion. And if you haven't ever read this book, true, it sounds like you read this one. I didn't even ask you. Have you read this one?
I didn't read this one.
Yeah, sorry, you said you did or you didn't?
I did not.
Oh, you did not. Okay. Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think you're right, spot on with like, I feel like you could see the Alchemist forming through this pilgrimage that he went on, kind of thing. I don't know, I almost made me think you read it or something like that. But yeah, I would encourage taking a chance on this one. It was a typical, from what I've experienced, Paulo Coelho book where you're like super confused the whole entire time until you're finally like, oh, I think I finally understood that at the very end. You go on that ride with them and it's fun. The question we can leave for everybody is, who in your life could use your guidance on their own quest? How can you give back, and how can you coach and help lead people to further cement those ideas in your own mind, but also to help them out at the same time? Something to think about, and we will see you all tomorrow.
Yep.